Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, a first-person romp across the world, solving ancient mysteries, but should you purchase it right now? This video will answer all of your questions by starting with a 60-second too long didn't read overview of the game, so you can tap out early if it doesn't appeal to you. Then we'll see what it's like to actually play it by examining the gameplay loop and mechanics, before looking at some practical considerations and the different types of players this game might appeal to help you decide whether this game is worth your time and money today. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is a single-player adventure set in 1937 between the events of Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade. With a first-person view, you'll travel the world from the jungle to the secretive Vatican City to the blistering sands of the desert and shivering in the icy, snow-capped mountains. You'll be solving relatively straightforward riddles based on symbols and shifting objects around to unlock doors. You'll sneak around in a variety of locations, attempting to take out the bad guys one by one, smashing them over the head with a variety of improvised weapons, such as a toilet brush that happens to be nearby, or throwing bottles to distract them and sneak past, or failing that, having a punch-up, or relying on your trusty whip to neutralize the threat. With Indy's grunts and complaining a constant reminder that he isn't Superman, I can do nothing more than tip my fedora hat to the developers for a job well done, even if there are a handful of performance issues and the enemies can act a bit strangely at times. So if you like the sound of an absorbing story, a world that feels lived in, and an utterly faithful and immersive recreation that is in keeping with the spirit of the original 3 movies, then Indiana Jones and the Great Circle might be your cup of tea. If that hasn't put you off, then grab a drink and get comfortable as we look through the detail of what you actually do in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Just a note that although there will be some detail about the beginning of the game, I will avoid spoilers of the main story in this review. Before diving into this single-player adventure, you can select from 2 main difficulty settings. Firstly, the action experience determines how difficult combat and stealth are by tweaking and customizing a variety of different settings. Then separately, the adventure experience has 2 options, easy and moderate, that decide how difficult the puzzles are and how much guidance you are given along the way. For context, considering I have the puzzle-solving ability of a stick, I found the moderate difficulty perfectly fine, and you can change these settings midway through a playthrough. But does it feel like Indiana Jones? The simple answer is yes. The world looks gorgeous and detailed. It's such a pleasant place to be when you're wandering around the bustling streets of Vatican City and other locations. To put it simply, the world feels lived in. The little details, such as items left out on a desk or on a table, make this a visual feast for the eyes, and the sound design is no less impressive. But more specific to Indiana Jones, this is mostly a low-threat world that feels very much like a family movie, with the occasional scary bug and jump scare, so even a wimp like me, that can't even watch videos of other people play Alien Isolation, felt a certain warm sense of comfort that I was in a movie made in the 1980s. As you sneak around and bonk a bad guy over the head, saying a cheesy one-liner when they hit the ground like, "Sweet dreams," in that trademark Indiana Jones voice. And hats off to the voice actor for Indy, as they sounded exactly like the Indiana Jones that we all know and love.
Just want to check out the view.
The developer simply nailed the aesthetic in every single way. As mentioned earlier, the locations you find yourself in make this a truly global romp across land, sea, and air. Some maps, such as Vatican City, are open-world experiences, where you can take your time to interact with the world and people around you at your own pace, whereas other locations are more linear by design. When you're up high, the views and wide shots of the city landscape or expansive wilderness look truly amazing, and often you can go to the places you can see in the distance. They're not just there for show. But what I found particularly interesting is that the Vatican City is basically an exact replica. I compared the game map to a real map and found it to be pretty damn accurate, though I'm sure some sacrifices have been made for the sake of gameplay. It is very cool to wander around the place dressed as a priest. Yes, you heard correctly. You can dress as a priest, and in a variety of other disguises, in order to sneak around and into restricted areas, in search of ancient relics or kidnapped friends. Though your disguises work most of the time, they won't fool a handful of captains who wander around certain points of the map, and if they identify you, they'll blow a whistle, at which point it's time to run. Getting around in this game involves climbing, swinging, zip lines, narrow passages, crawl spaces, swimming, and more. But this isn't Assassin's Creed. Indy is human, and it shows. Stamina is limited, and his grunts as he heaves himself up over a ledge reminds you he's a middle-aged man who can still climb great heights, but it's precarious. The game provides you with handy maps that you actually look at in your hands for some added immersion, and although there isn't an in-your-face trail of breadcrumbs telling you exactly where to go, it's very easy to get that at the tap of a button if you're feeling impatient. Stealth is a major feature of this adventure that you will be using most of the time. As you crouch walk through a restricted area, hoping to sneak up behind someone before they spot you, you'll hear a little chime and see a circle begin to fill as you draw the attention of a bad guy. At the lower difficulty settings, this is particularly forgiving, as a bad guy doesn't notice you knock out his friend practically in front of him. It's not game over if you're spotted though. Running and hiding is usually enough to get them off your back, and it's pretty easy to fend off a whole group of enemies most of the time. It's just more immersive when you pull off a slick stealth move, as beating up a group of 10 guys isn't particularly indie style. If you're not wandering the streets exploring or sneaking around where you shouldn't, chances are you'll be in some form of ancient temple or metropolis attempting to solve a variety of puzzles. The level of difficulty is family-friendly, for the most part. It reminds me of Skyrim, more so than the Water Temple in the Ocarina of Time. There's a bunch of variety and some genuinely interesting mechanics to work with, which I don't want to spoil for you, but ultimately it's all very manageable for those who don't consider themselves great at solving puzzles, like myself. You can take pictures with your trusty camera, which will often give you a hint when you get stuck, and worst case scenario, there's nothing quite as immersive as holding up a flaming torch or lighter to illuminate a wall of Egyptian hieroglyphics while attempting to solve a mystery, even when you actually have no idea what you're doing. The Great Circle is the main story, but there are a handful of side quests. Though don't expect this to be like The Witcher 3. The side quests are mostly about collecting a bunch of items as you progress through a particular map, or indeed the entire game. There are a handful of story-driven side quests, but most of them feed into the main story in one way or another. So basically, this game is all about progressing through the main story. A very, very good main story. As you complete missions and take pictures with your trusty camera, you will earn adventure points. You will also find the occasional book lying around or available for sale, which, by spending your adventure points, can boost your statistics or unlock a particular move. It's a basic system that adds just enough to encourage you to look for the books and to collect adventure points to unlock them when you find them. Fighting in this game is surprisingly detailed. You can use your fists, pick up an improvised weapon, as there are tons of those lying around. You can use your whip, or very occasionally you can use a gun, but using a gun draws unwanted attention to the point that it's basically not worth doing. In melee combat, you can block, parry, and charge up attacks to break your opponent's guard. It's basic, but they have put some thought into this system. On its own, punching can become repetitive, but once you combine it with throwing objects at one guy, sneaking up behind another to deliver a one-hit knockout, using your whip to disarm an opponent, pull another off their feet, and pull another towards you so you can knock them out, overall, you have a varied and satisfying combat system that encourages you to actually employ all of those options. You can carry food and fruit to restore or boost your health and stamina, but even then, your stamina doesn't last long, making prolonged fights a real risk. This game looks absolutely stunning, no two ways about it. I've played on PC with a 4070 Ti, which is a pretty decent graphics card, but I wasn't able to use the highest graphics settings because they were grayed out due to my lack of VRAM, sad face. However, using a lot of DLSS, I can confirm the game looks phenomenal in 2K resolution. However, it doesn't work well on Steam Deck from my experience, and there are a few glitches here and there, but many have already been patched out. Basically, the game looks great, and I'm genuinely jealous of those who are going to get to play this on PS5 later in 2025, especially once a few more performance patches have been released. It's going to look gorgeous. Hopefully by now you have an idea of what it's like to actually play Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. So let's address some other more practical considerations that might affect your purchasing decision. The tutorial has a habit of telling you key information while you're in the middle of a tense moment. As a result, you might find yourself not using half of the features for the first half of the game, but there is a handy guide accessible from the main menu that covers everything in short and sharp sentences, so there's no real reason to watch YouTube videos that teach you how to play the game. Just spend 10 minutes reading the built-in guide and you'll know everything. This game is a cinematic experience. As such, you don't need to commit much time at all to this adventure, as it's easy to pick up from where you left off. However, if you want the full experience, I encourage you to spend a good couple of hours minimum each gaming session, as the immersion levels are off the charts. You cannot play with friends. This is a single-player campaign experience only. The game is fully deserving of its AAA price tag, even if it does irk me to see games priced at $70 in general. There are even more expensive editions of the game that provide additional digital content, but to be honest with you, I think anything other than the base game is a complete waste of money. In complete contrast, the game was a day one release on Xbox Game Pass, which continues to deliver good value, in my opinion. So with all that said, is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle right for you today? As always, it depends who you are. If you aren't that bothered about Indiana Jones but love a good story in a game with a decent single-player campaign, then there is plenty for you to enjoy here. Many of the more decent single-player experiences of recent years are all too short, but The Great Circle doesn't suffer from that affliction. The story is both quality and a decent length, that's what she said. So if nothing else, this game delivers an immersive, cinematic experience, even if you have no real interest in the Indiana Jones franchise. If you like a challenging puzzle, then this game will leave you wanting. There are plenty of puzzles and riddles. They're varied and at times they surprise you. But they're just not particularly challenging, if that's your thing. Most are blindingly obvious, with only a few making you scratch your head for a few moments. So if you're looking for a real challenging puzzle, you may want to look elsewhere. If you love Indiana Jones, the original movies in particular, then there is a lot at stake for you here. But as you can probably tell from the reviews so far, they've absolutely nailed it, in my opinion. I would go as far as to say this game is the perfect representation of the original 3 Indiana Jones movies. From the main man himself to the music, the story, the adventures, the puzzles, the near misses, and especially the gorgeous environments that you find yourself exploring. This is one of those rare moments in recent years where a AAA game actually lived up to the hype. Perhaps not quite to the same level of Baldur's Gate 3, but certainly within that realm, which is quite an achievement. This is a must-play for Indiana Jones fans, and I recommend watching the 3 original movies right before jumping into the game. If you have any further questions, please feel free to ask, or if you already own the game and have some additional information you'd like to add, please let us all know in the comments below. If you found the video useful, please leave a like for the algorithm gods, and if you enjoy this style of review, consider subscribing for more content. And I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.